Welcome to Single Track. Let's kick off this week's episode with a couple awesome product features. You guys know Rumple, my daughter's favorite outdoor and everyday blanket. Well, they've been working with rad independent artists to create limited edition blankets that sell out faster than your vegan donuts at the street corner food truck. Their latest collab is with artist Rachel Pohl and shows a beautiful painting of the Grand Tetons. The blankets are made out of 100% post-consumer recycled polyester shell and insulation. They have nanoloft insulation technology and offer DWR finish for stain and water resistance. Here at the Single Track Global Headquarters and Eichler household, we love our Rumple blankets. Visit rumple.com, that's RUMPL.com, and check out their full line of incredible indoor and everywhere blankets and find a design that fits your style. You all know I'll be running the Ultra Tour Monte Rosa 100K in early September in Switzerland. What makes this race challenging to prepare for, aside from the almost 23,000 feet of vertical gain and loss and the international travel challenges during COVID, is that we're packing minimally, and everything I'll take with me to Switzerland has to 100% work. I can't just do what I do with races within a drive from my home, where I throw a whole bunch of stuff I think I might need into a car and then the night before decide what I actually will use. Yeah, that's not the smartest move, I know, but this is sort of how I operate. Overpack, bring lots of things for various scenarios, and last minute nail down the details. So for UTMR, I'll have to dial my gear 100% before I depart the States. And all that gear has to be minimal, functional, and dependable. So with that, I've been looking for a hydration racing vest that can deliver on that promise. And yes, I have plenty of other vests. Some of them are good for shorter runs with lots of aid stations around and very little required gear. UTMR requires me to carry a bunch of stuff I might need in the real mountains, so I need a bigger vest. In comes the Nathan Pinnacle Series 12-liter race vest. It's light, breathable, super functional with tons of pockets and fits extremely well. The vest comes with a big insulated water bladder, but can also hold soft flasks up front. Smart storage allows you to easily reach for your stuff on your back, and the new shape sits a bit longer on the back, allowing you for dispersed capacity. I've not found the perfect way to store my poles on that vest, but I still have a few weeks of serious training ahead to sort this all out. The Nathan Pinnacle 12-liter race vest just jumped into the forefront of serious contenders for the vest I will bring with me to run the Ultra Tour Monte Rosa this summer. Visit nathansports.com, that's nathansports.com, and check out the brand new Pinnacle series of super lightweight racing vests and hydration belts. And now, let's dive in.
How's it going, second place?
What can I say?
Oh, I thought it was funny because I was like, I have my goal, and then I saw where you were. I was like, this is gonna get like so funny to me. But yeah, I had my. So we were invited to participate. A little background here: participate in a Strava challenge, which is a newer thing on Strava right now, which is actually a really good way to kind of grow community and get more people involved and have fun little events. I enjoyed that aspect. But we were invited for a try and do 20,000 feet of gain in 4 weeks, in 28 days. And immediately I was like, I want to get 25,000, if not 28,000 feet. I thought that would be a fun goal. So I got 25,000 feet because I was at like 24.87. And I realized that if I went in like at 10 o'clock and did 3 sets of hills that I would get my 25,000. And so I did that. And then I came back and saw that you were at like 24,998. I was like, all right, that works.
I know.
I was like only focused on my numbers. And then I saw what you had and I was like, well, that was funny.
It was weird. So So to backtrack a little bit, so Strava, introduced a feature. They've always had two sets of features. One was the official challenge that you could join, right? Run a 10K, your fastest 10K or whatever in a month. And, as a community grew, it just became ridiculous, right? Because people from all over the world joined, and you sort of joined it, and to the point that I don't even join those anymore, because otherwise your feed is full with everybody at the beginning of the month joining 25 challenges, and that info gets spilled into your feed that they joined the challenge. So, I mean, they could probably filter this out a little bit, but either way, so there were these official challenges, and then there were groups. And if you have a public group, people from all over the world who have no connection to you start joining your group, and then they run like 3,000 miles in a month, and you can't. For a while, there was a leaderboard. It was sort of fun, but now you've got some, I don't know, 400-pound hacker who sits in a basement in Russia who runs 5,000 miles a month in your group, right? And so you can't even look at the leaderboard anymore. So they introduced this new feature where anybody can start a challenge that is, I think, time-based, vertical-based, elevation-based, or mileage-based. And you can select people that you want to invite. And and then you have a leaderboard based on whatever that challenge is. And it's a little bit hard to surface. Like, I forgot about it for most of the time.
Yep.
And then I looked in at after my weekend run and realizing I should be fairly close to actually making the goal, and then I was like, okay, I just need to continue my training and I'll be okay, right?
Yeah.
Not expecting to be so high because I saw who else was invited and thinking,
exactly. I was like, I would like a good showing. That's all I wanted.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, there are these challenges, and it's it's fun and it's pointless and stuff.
Yeah.
So
it helped for me just kind of organize each week on Strava in a different way. Like, for me, I was able to just quickly glance at one thing and be like, okay, this is where I'm at in where I want to be. Like, how am I doing? We're at 14 days and I'm at 15,000 feet. Okay, like, I'm on track for what I want to do.
Yeah.
And that's really what's interesting is if you don't pay for Strava, because I haven't, because I like to not pay for things that I may not need, but I realized that I am only allowed 3 of those challenges on a non-paid subscription.
Oh, okay.
And I've already used 1, so.
Like 3 period or 3 concurrent?
3 period. 3 period.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's another way to kind of like rope you into it, which I think like is good because I'm like, oh man, if I could only do 3 of these, like that's not fun. I enjoy being able to see groups of people that are not inundated with just everybody around the world who are like also marking down their train rides as runs, right?
Exactly.
So it was just a nice way to do that. So, and I just wanted to tease you because I was like, how did we end up 1 and 2? Like,
I know.
What in the world happened here? Come on, everybody, step up your game. We are mediocre.
I think, yeah, we were the only ones who, I don't know, were we the only ones who cared about the challenge?
Yeah. Well, I think we're also in the same kind of mentality at where we are in training.
Okay.
I think we're both kind of in this. We know our legs are going to be very pushed with a lot of and I know other people have races coming up too, but I think like we're both kind of in this. We have a race around the same time. We both are in a similar training block to some degree. You're running a much longer race, but I'm throwing 3 races together on a weekend, and I'm just like, okay, this makes sense to me. And plus, we love to get gain. Right, like at the end of the day, I think like it's we love getting gain, and any chance we get to do it, we will, and that's where I'm like, I went up Pine Creek Lake, and we'll dive right into running.
Let's do it.
But I went up Pine Creek Lake with my friend Nellie, who is doing who I'm pacing for the 28K at the Rut. She hasn't done a race like this before, so I'm trying to just get her terrain that's, that's technical enough to be challenging, and, not really even running it, just being like, you need to just increase your hiking speed. You need to be comfortable hiking fast going downhill. Because this is one of my friends that has a fear of falling and tripping down a hill and rolling all the way down to a road.
Yeah.
She understands it's irrational and it's a joke, but so going downhill is something she does not want to fall ever, and I understand that because falling sucks. And so, but there's a little bit of risk you have to take to make cutoff times on long, steep races, right? You can't just slowly go down and pick your way across a boulder field.
That's where you lose cutoff, right? If you're too slow on the downhill, that's really what it is, right? Everybody is reasonably slow on the uphills. Uphills are hard, and especially at elevation. But on the downhills, if you're too slow, that's when you get killed.
Yeah, and that's what happened on the 50 a couple of years ago. Is I kept leapfrogging this woman from Seattle, and she was jogging up the steepest of hills. She was jogging up Lone Peak. But then as soon as she got to the down, she slowed way down. And she was the last person to finish. Mm-hmm. Barely finished. But, she was super far ahead of me at mile 24, right? And then it was downhill from there. But so I took my friend up and just basically, tried to do a good confidence day, because I think that's super important. For me, it was almost too easy of a day at this point, and I'm not saying that to brag, but going at 30-minute pace up and down hills is just not a challenge for me. I can do that for quite a while.
Yeah.
So, but
those are the best. Those are the best training days, right? I mean, that's that low impact.
Exactly.
And you still get the time on feet, right? I mean,
exactly.
Because you walk away from it not overly exhausted, and so therefore you can immediately dive back in. So I always really enjoy those days as part of a bigger training block.
Yeah, it was great just to get. It was about 11 miles and 4,000 feet, just a perfect day, and it was sunny and it rained. It started raining as we started to cool it down, and then it just got warmer and warmer throughout the day. And then the wind picked up as we started going down the hill. So, all of that was good. And it was good just to spend a bunch of hours with a person that I'm going to be spending a bunch of hours with on race day, right?
Yeah.
Just to be able to talk about, okay, what's the strategy going to be? How are you feeling? Just trying to get to know how that person's reacting to terrain and a long day. And it was good. It's just an interesting thing to do, to take someone out to train with them while trying to maximize your own training as well. And like you said, days like that are good. Had that only been a couple thousand feet a gain in the same pace, I don't know if I would have felt as good about it.
Yeah.
But I think we're in a good place for it. I'm a little concerned because that 28 that cutoff time is pretty tight if you can't go down fast.
So what's your strategy? Because you want to triple, but you are pacing her. If you get a sense that she,
unless she tells me to go ahead, I'm not going to leave her, because I initially signed up to pace her.
Okay.
I've already finished the race. Mm-hmm. If I don't get that triple, but I get some miles that day, I still have done every race at the rut. Mm-hmm. This race is irrelevant unless I just feel like bragging. But no, I don't. I promised that I would be with her for the race, and that's what I'm going to do. Cool. And we talked about that, and I was like, I'm not going to leave unless you're like, I'm done, but I know you want to go, and then I'll go. Mm-hmm. But I've already done it. I did it. I finished it when I didn't know how to train for races like this and coming from sea level. Mm-hmm. I know I can do this race if I'm on my own. There's not a question of it, even with a triple. Not even concerned.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So if I don't get it, that's not. I don't care about the DNF. It doesn't matter. I told her the very worst case scenario is you're not allowed to drop out until you get up to Lone Peak. Mm-hmm. And then if you're like, I'm done, then I'm fine with that because I still get all the gain. So.
Yeah. Well, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. We talked about that, and I was like, yeah, I just don't care. I signed up a couple of years ago for it because we were going to do it last year, right? And like it's I feel like that's if I had never ran it before and it was a truly unique race, then it would be a little different, but it's in our backyard, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's cool.
And I'm not going to win. So it doesn't matter.
You're not going to win. Well,
I'm going to go all out on that VK and still get dead last. So
is there like an official, like, did you sign up for 3 different races, or is there like a button that says?
No, I signed up for 3. Even if you do the real trifecta, I'm calling this the modified trifecta because they have the trifecta, and if you finish it, then like you do the vertical kilometer, the 28K, and then the 50K.
Oh, the 50K, and you're dropping to the 11. Yeah,
and I'm doing the 11 because that'll be the only other race that I haven't done besides the VK. And that was really the thing, is if I do every race, then I don't have anything to do there anymore.
Right.
And I can go find other races to do, or not race on Memorial Day and have to like train through August. Missing the best days for training. I say as I go up mountains that I would go up anyway. So.
Yeah, those are the best training times, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you also had a mountain adventure.
Yeah. Friend of the show Ben and I hooked up. And we just started chatting a couple weeks ago. I was looking. I need to get into serious training for Monte Rosa, and speaking of competing priorities and how difficult it is to schedule things, I also have LBA to organize, and so I'm trying to figure out how to get things done without completely killing myself, and realistically just organizing LBA is enough to kill myself, and so trying to stack it on top of each other makes it challenging. So I looked for at least 5,000 feet of gain in the most convenient way possible. I mean, we had with this heat wave insane snow melt, so most of the mountains are now free, but I didn't want to risk it on some like adventure where you then end up being out for like 12 hours or something, right? I wanted something fairly reasonably local and quick. And so Ben came up with an interesting route out of Staircase, where we first went up Copper Creek on the Lightning Peak side of Staircase, and then dropped down, and we did the Staircase loop for fun to get some extra miles in, and then we went up to Wagon Wheel and the saddle off Cup Peak. And that ended up I think almost 6,500 feet of gain, which was great, and was a fun day out. I had never been up to the Copper Creek side, so that was an interesting adventure because the trail is great. What hit me? You've been up there, I assume?
Yeah.
You've not been up further to Lightning Peak, have you?
I've done most of Lightning Peak, but had to turn around.
Okay.
Due to weather.
Yeah, we just did that little loop up there. It's kind of a fun trail because it sort of leads to nowhere. It's sort of a similar loop like Mount Rose, but Mount Rose at least has a summit block with some views. Like Copper Creek has sort of nothing. You just kind of like loop, and before you know it, you're back down to the connector, and you're like, oh, I guess we're done. What was interesting is, and it hit me directly at 7:30 in the morning, but it dawned on me that because the Copper Creek side is on the opposite side of almost all of the hikes that we're doing out of Staircase, the sun hits it early in the morning.
Yeah. So,
like early in the morning, where you're sort of hiking fairly steep up that along that waterfall / stream that's coming down there, the sun was beating into it, and it was so hot. I mean, we were like sweating profusely, and usually, right, when you do anything out of Big Creek or do Mount Rose or whatever, right, if you start early in the morning, you're in the shade and it's cool, and it sort of takes you a while to even kind of see the sun. And because we were on the opposite side of the lake, it got hot really quick. So that was something of consideration. And I'm saying this because if people are thinking about doing this is definitely something to consider, because it was just so insanely hot in the moment, right? I mean, because it was early, we had enough water for that one. We ran out of water then our wagon wheel, but we did stop at the car to refuel. But at that time, it just was a hot day. I didn't expect it to be so hot.
What did you think of the ridge at the top of Lightning Peak?
Well, I mean, we didn't make it to Lightning Peak, right? It's just that...
Oh, yeah, you went up... yeah, that's right.
We just did that copper loop, right? So we didn't actually go further up.
If you want a fun scramble, like, I know what it looks like from friends' pictures.
Yeah.
I need to get up there, but it's reminiscent of Cub Peak, but with a great view of Lake Cushman.
Yeah.
It's probably the better view of Cushman, like better than Rose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. I've seen some pictures too, and it looks very nice. It wasn't a day for that. We didn't want to push it.
Especially since you had other things.
Exactly, we were in a trail running mode. We didn't want to waste time scrambling around. I mean, we didn't even do the ridge on Cup Peak, right? We stayed at that first boulder there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no,
yeah,
I
was gonna tease you about that on Strava. Be like, that's not the true summit of Cub Peak, guys.
I know. I mean, Ben is hesitant in that environment, and especially,
as you're aware, it's absolute shit rocks.
No, exactly, and especially fairly late in the game. We've already climbed 6,000 feet at that point, right? We weren't the freshest anymore, and
shaky legs on exposure and terrible scree is not a good combo, and it's a good call not to challenge.
Yeah, and this German word Seilschaft, this rope team, directly translated, right? If you go out with somebody, you commit to going that person's pace or in that person's comfort level, right? And I was perfectly fine with not going up because I've done it twice already. And I would have never pushed him because, we decided, and I wouldn't have done it by myself.
Yep.
To say, why don't you just hang out here and wait for me and I'll quickly go over there and come back. Type deal, right?
Yeah.
There is a time where that is okay, but that didn't, that never even crossed my mind. What was really cool, well, two things were really cool. Number one, on that meadow, okay, so we've got some crazy noise coming now, dear listeners, and we might have to stop the podcast here. I hope that we don't have to, because we have some contractors working on the other side of the house. Hopefully it's far away enough that we don't have to worry about it. But I hope that they're not turning the compressor on. So just a quick side note. Anyway, the two amazing things were the meadow just below the true summit of Cap Peak. The wildflowers were absolutely exploding.
Oh, yeah.
It was incredible. We hit it at the absolute perfect time.
That is going up from the lake.
Yeah. When
that slide area is covered in flowers is like the greatest in the world. And then getting up top is like, yeah. I think that's when I've had more Julie Andrews moments than I care to admit.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely fantastic up there. And then the other really cool thing for me, sort of emotionally, was to be back up there after Cushman 6, and just to look over and say, "Oh yeah, I last time was up
on
here.
That one, and I did that one, and I did that one."
Exactly.
Yeah, because from that Cub Peak false summit, you get to see basically your whole route.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Were you pointing it out to Ben and being like, "So that's where this happened"? And
I wasn't just pointing it out to Ben. There was another hiker up on the top, and so I was I was showing off very, very much.
That's awesome.
So. Yeah.
As you should have, because no one else has done that. But yeah, I think having that is going to be good for your the 6,000 foot day. Anytime you can get a 6,000 plus day, it's amazing. How are your legs feeling after that? Because you only took like 1 week off of serious training and elevation between your 100 miler attempt. It was like a week and a half, and then you just kind of jump back in.
But yeah, and I took a week off after lumberjack.
That's right. Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't need any more because I felt so great at lumberjack. I mean, I didn't walk away with any injuries. I didn't walk away with any like endless blisters or any pains or aches that I felt like I had to nurse out. I wanted to be smart and allow my body and my mind to rest. I feel like after really long efforts, I also sort of need to allow myself to realize that I'm not just a runner. I mean, you sort of have to kind of lay flat for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then you can sort of attack again. You know, there's a natural feeling of like, yeah, I want to put running shoes on again. Right?
Yeah.
So no, I feel great. I feel that the next day my quads were sore. In fact, I think my hip was hurting for like 24 hours, and I think it had something to do with that I was driving back. And around Hoodsport, it was super busy, and so I was driving a little bit more tensed up than I would usually drive, right? I couldn't just put, I mean, anyway, not a cruise control person, but I couldn't just quite relax that way. And I think because I had my foot on the gas and stuff, so I think my legs didn't relax as much as they should have.
On like the outside of your hip.
Yeah,
kinda,
exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
Exactly, right.
When I did my Yellowstone road runs, that was the issue that plagued me the most.
Yeah.
Because I was having to drive through the park. Again, you can't really develop a rhythm. You're going slow and fast, putting on the brake, accelerating. You're watching for animals. You're watching for other cars the whole time. And like, yeah, that was that. I'm not happy to hear that happens because it takes a while to loosen up. But I'm glad to know that that's what it was from. That's what I assumed it was from. So glad to know.
Yeah, no, exactly. But then, you know, I took the Sunday off. And then Monday went out to Kaiser and sort of did a kind of a fast walk with Trixie there, and so it was all good. So I did a really hard run into Capitol Forest on Tuesday afternoon. It was like 90 degrees, and I pushed it fairly hard. And I feel really good. I feel ready to sort of amp up to that next training block in lead up to UTMR, while at the same time organizing orientation runs for the backyard adventure.
Exactly. It's a tough balance. What is your next training block? Is it more distance?
No, it's all
increased. All vert. Yeah,
it's all vert. I know I can do the distance. So let's talk about Monte Rosa for a second. I just got an email on Sunday, sometime during the weekend, and they
were announcing your presence. Being there
exactly.
Your,
they're like a world
for your podium finishes.
Yeah, world behold.
Exactly.
No, I got an email. We all, every person signed up for Monte Rosa got an email and saying that the route is going to change, and it's going to be interesting. And I think UTMB, and I don't know. I don't know if UTMB is big enough that they can push the requirement through, if they're big enough that they have the organizational capacity, because UTMB starts in France and goes through Italy and Switzerland. So they need permits from 2 different countries to allow runners crossing borders during COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And with the Delta variant, Europe is back on edge a little bit. I mean, vaccinations are happening, but not as fast, and the Delta variant is sort of coming. So Europe is a little bit in a weird state. So 2 weeks ago, two weeks ago, the IGO Ultra Trail, which I think is the biggest Swiss ultramarathon, they announced a change in route that didn't cross borders and stayed only in Switzerland. And so I kind of was waiting for this, and I hadn't booked anything beyond our stay in Switzerland. And because my 100K, like the full 160K, 100 mile, I guess, would start in Grächen, and finish in Grächen, the town in Switzerland, and go through Italy. My 100K would start in Italy, and I would have to travel to Italy and then cross the border into Switzerland and finish in Grächen. And now that 100K is rerouted and will start and finish in Grächen. So I think the elevation total dropped by like 1,000 feet or so. I mean,
okay.
I think it's 22 instead of 23,000 or something.
Yeah.
It's a little bit less, but
that's easy then.
Yeah, no, exactly.
They really just took it from an upper echelon to just very manageable.
No, I know. I mean, I completely took the foot off the gas when it comes to training.
Yeah, exactly. Training's over.
I'm done, guys. So, but it's not going to be for another 2 weeks, 10 days or so until they announce the final route. So I haven't actually seen the route. It might be in out and back now, I think.
Okay.
So, logistically, this makes it easier for me because I'm going with my family to Grächen. We have a place to stay in Grächen. We talked about how beautiful that place is. And I'm going to start my run in Grächen and finish it. And so that makes it easy logistically. Now, practically, the race is different, right? It's going to be, there's always going to be an asterisk on that route, on that finish, if I do finish. And when I finish, I suppose I should be more confident about that, right?
At finish.
Exactly. So there's going to be an asterisk. But on the other side, it's also going to be cool to experience sort of a unique route. And here is what the cool part is, and that is the 100K. The traditional 100K goes along the backside of Monte Rosa, which I think is the harder but less scenic part of the course, because it doesn't go right underneath the Matterhorn. And the first half of the course of the 100-miler goes over the longest longest footbridge, the world's longest, Europe's longest footbridge. So it's a huge hanging footbridge over a glacier.
Wow.
And then goes right underneath the Matterhorn. And 100K doesn't see that side of the route. And so I hope, I don't know that at all, right? The route's not announced, but it could be that the special edition route might end up being, might be an out and back, so it might be less exciting from that point, but might be more exciting because it might see some of the pieces of the trails that we don't see otherwise.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm saying...
It'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting what it is, because it's just like, to have changes in courses, I mean, you kind of go in to races just... This is the distance, this is the approximate elevation, this is what I need to do. Less concerned about the course itself. Where are the aid stations, you pay attention to that a little, but you're more out there just to figure out what it is while you're there. Not a ton of research ahead of time. Is that fair to say?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you think about it...
In recent races, at least, that's been the...
I would say, in the end, it's unimportant from a training point of view, from a physical point of view, physical preparation point of view. You look at the mileage and the vertical gain and the terrain and the aid stations, and you're done, right? But realistically, you sign up for races because of if you're thinking destination races, right? If you're thinking of traveling, then you sign up for races because of the scenery, right? I think emotionally it is very important what you got to see, what you get to see, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think it is actually very, very important and very exciting, especially, I mean, if you travel halfway around the world to a race. I mean, I don't know if I would see a video of a trail race in New Zealand. And it would be completely in the woods, to the point that it looks like coastal mountain range here along the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if I would want to travel down there, right? What attracts me for traveling, for putting the expenses out to travel far, is to go to a place where racing truly is different from what I'm racing around here, right? And so for me, I think the vistas is actually very important, right?
Yeah. I think what I was saying is that you will go out there based on the area that it's in, but you're not necessarily like studying each mountain you're going to see right now.
Yeah, like, no, absolutely.
Yeah. It's you get to run in mountains you love.
Yeah. No,
and that's what matters.
Exactly.
And as long as the course is in those mountains and not just like in a road in a tunnel, then it's okay.
No, exactly. I mean, whatever the route's going to be, it's going to be spectacular out there for sure, right?
Yeah.
I'm super excited that the race is happening. I'm super excited that, I'm super excited about the practical logistics, being able to start and finish in Griechen will make it great for the family too.
What was the plan when it was two separate spots?
So there were two possible scenarios. One scenario was to travel to Griechen with the family, get them checked in the day before, and then take an official shuttle bus that you can book with the race organization and travel to Krasny the Saint. I'm pronouncing that completely wrong now, but to that town in Italy in the Aosta Valley where the race starts, and book a room all through that race organization, and then spend one night there, and then go to the start and run the race, and essentially run back to Griechen, right? So that was essentially, that's the official plan. The other option would have been, if we are coming from Italy, that we would actually drop me off at a starting point and have my family travel to Griechen and check in by themselves, which is also a possibility, right? I mean, again, right? It's only 100K between start and finish, but in these mountain valleys, it's like 2.5, 3 hour drive, right? Through some little passes and tunnels and stuff like that. So that was the initial plan, because that's the only way of how you can logistically make that work. Now we're starting finishing. Makes it all easier.
Was there a temptation to run? To leave your family, run the road through the tunnels and valleys, and then run the race?
Absolutely not.
Oh, come on. You didn't want to ride a bike through there? Either?
It's beautiful terrain. I absolutely would love to do. But
that'd just be too much.
No, I know. I'm excited to drive around in these mountains. Every now and then I enjoy taking the back road from the Crystal Mountain entrance into Mount Rainier and drive all the way over to Paradise and stuff. Right?
Yep. Oh,
if you catch it at the
Canyon and
if you catch it at the right time and you're not stuck behind 12 RVs, then it can be an absolute spectacular drive, right? So I mean, I'm not a big car driver per se. I don't enjoy driving for the sake of it, but there are some beautiful routes to drive, and in the Alps it tends to not get boring.
As a transition to our next topic, I was working on an article about the Mount Baker Highway, and I was speaking with somebody that works at the visitor center at Maple Falls, and they're talking about. I was trying to get information about the snowfall and whether or not Mount Baker currently has the world record for most snow in a year or not. And she was like, "I think it got replaced by somewhere in like Japan or Italy, but I don't know if that's right because Italy doesn't have mountains." And so I got to just be like, well, actually, and I felt kind of like an ass, but and she was like, I had no idea. This is amazing. And so she was like pulling up all the pictures. And I was like, good. I'm doing a public service here of letting people know that Italy does indeed have mountains. Like, there's the Alps. You know.
I'm blaming Rick Steves exclusively for that. Perhaps Martha Stewart too. Because I think so much of tourism to Italy and sort of marketing around Italy is predicated on two things, right? One of them is art history, and the other one is food. Mm-hmm. And because of those two things, most of kind of the visuals and what we know about Italy is all focused around the cities, where the old Roman buildings are and where the museums are and the Vatican is, and then obviously Tuscany and all of the vineyard regions where food is happening, right?
Yes.
And so the fact that Italy has more to offer is, I mean, that's the thing that I always hated as a German traveling beyond my borders, because everybody always thinks that all of Germany is Bavaria. Yeah. It's all the visuals of Bavaria. And you're like, well, actually.
Exactly. You're like, yeah, that's one part, guys. It's a decent-sized country. It's not Liechtenstein.
Having said this, for me, all of the U.S. is Californian beaches. Mm-hmm. When I first came over here, I expected Californian beaches and then somewhere in New York City metropolitan area, but everything else didn't exist.
Yep. Oh, you knew that there was like a desert Southwest, or at least there is a place where cowboys and indigenous peoples roamed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. No, for sure. I think
also
assumed,
filmed in Italy. No, that was sorry.
No, serious. No.
Yeah.
The German made Cowboys and Indian movie, and I say Indian because I'm saying it derogatory.
Exactly. That was the term used for these.
That was the term, right? Those were filmed in Yugoslavia. In the Alps there, in the mountainous regions there. They weren't filmed over here in the U.S.
But maybe someday we'll talk about that. The film we watched together.
But this is not this.
But this is not that episode.
I just assumed, if you ask me about the Southwest, I just assumed that the Southwest, the cowboy towns were all taken over by Baywatch people.
Okay. It was just sandstone sculptures in the back and red sandstone colored bathing suits.
So when I first met my wife Trixie, who lived in Seattle at the time, the internet didn't exist properly, right? You couldn't just like type in Seattle and get all the information about Seattle. There were so few visuals. You have to. Kids, you have to try to picture.
We had to watch. We could watch pictures, download line by line, and it took 10 minutes to see a city. It just wasn't worth it.
It's just funny.
That's if no one wanted to make a phone call.
Yeah, it's just funny, right? It's like people, everything is out of our fingertips. Everything is knowable, and you don't. It's a different level of knowing, but everything is knowable now, right? But back then, so one of my visuals about Seattle, when I first met Trixie, was the logo of the Seattle Supersonics. Perfect visual, because that doesn't exist anymore either yet. But the logo of the Supersonics had this stylized Space Needle on it.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't know what that style, because it's, very NBA typical graphic stylized Space Needle. And I assumed that visual represented an oil pump. And Seattle was somewhere where oil was pumped.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't like a strongly held belief that I, tried to run out for Congress for. That was just something that...
Yeah, it's just that was the interpretation of it.
Yeah, I saw it, and I saw this Space Needle looking thing, and I thought, Seattle's probably somewhere where they pump oil because, I grew up with Dallas and Denver Clan, and it is kind of like... What. So anyway, little did I know.
Yeah.
Like
the only oil pumped there is like... I don't know. I was going to make a joke, and then it wasn't good. Anyway, no, that's very interesting, and I think it's entertaining to see how people will interpret an area when they haven't been to it, and I'm very glad you shared that with me because I've never heard that story, and I'm like, I'm buying you all Sonics logo now just because it's funny.
I know.
I even pulled up the one. It's for anybody asking, I almost am sure that it is the kind of green background, red and orange Sonics. The eye in Sonics is a Space Needle, and on the Space Needle there's a basketball.
I think that's what it is. Yeah.
So if anybody's wondering, there's also an older one that's like half a basketball and then the city skyline. But
no, it's some kind of spacing, and I don't know why I thought that, and I don't know how long I thought that. Again, right? I mean, I'm not trying to excuse my ignorance, but
why would you know it though?
Well, Seattle back then was really not popular, right? I mean, Seattle was one of those like minor cities that nobody beyond people who listen to grunge music knew, right? I mean, Starbucks wasn't there, Amazon wasn't there, Microsoft sort of was there, but also not that big yet because computers and the internet weren't big yet, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this was all... Oh shit! We are old. I'm old. Damn. to have this long-winded history is sort of embarrassing.
Well, Sleepless in Seattle came out in '93.
Yeah. So Sleepless in Seattle
Seattle was
out,
known,
yes. Right?
But it wasn't.
But you know how these movies are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember watching countless of these movies where you were where the movie is obviously anchored around a city. And then you watch it in the hope to get to know the city, and you realize that 95% is filmed in, either inside a studio or in a completely different city. So you don't actually get to know the city, right? They have like 2 or 3 like money shots, and the rest is actually filmed somewhere else. So you don't really get to know the city.
Yes.
on some of those movies, right? And so, Sleepless in Seattle was known, but I don't know.
I feel like the houseboat.
Don't know if I've watched it.
The houseboat got more attention than anything else in that movie.
Yeah, it would be interesting to do some research and see how much of it is actually filmed in Seattle.
Yeah, I think quite a bit of the Seattle scenes were because that is before we raised the tax code to try and make more money when people filmed in the city.
Yeah.
So, good job Washington State Legislature for scaring out the film industry, and good job film industry for just not wanting to pay a few extra dollars when exploiting cities and towns.
Now everything's filmed in Vancouver.
Toronto.
Or Vancouver, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think all
and
of
Atlanta. Atlanta is like really,
oh yeah. I just watched some weird Netflix superhero show, and there's a big like this project was made possible by Georgia.
Yeah,
funding
I don't think
tourism.
that's going to last as long.
I know, right? I was like,
darn. Anyway, so I talked to this lady to complete the transition here.
Oh, wow.
to our
We're
subject.
still there.
Yes, I talked to this woman at the visitor center. If you're ever driving the Mount Baker Highway, stop at the visitor center in Maple Falls. Like, they're awesome, and they really encourage people to get outside and find good trails and have that outdoor recreation adventure that you want. I was impressed talking to them as somebody who talks to a lot of these tourism groups. This was one of my favorites to talk to. So nothing but respect to them. But when I talked to all these people for articles, I asked them the same question. And I'm like, this is never going to be in an article. It's just my own general curiosity. So, of course, I'm going to talk about it on a podcast. I asked about how crowding is and how visitor behavior has been for people going up to Mount Baker this year. And the response I got was crowding isn't an issue. People are going out, but why wouldn't they want to go out? It's great to see so many people loving nature. Good attitude there. Love that response. And then the biggest thing for them was that people are heading up to the mountains and not understanding that there's still some snow in them despite the heat wave, especially with Baker when it receives so much. And they were talking about how patience is one of those things that people aren't rude there, but patience is wearing thin because people have these plans that they have set in stone and then they're not able to do them and they get frustrated. And the reason I bring this up is because we've been talking off mic a lot about bringing this conversation on mic about how tourism communities are being impacted by the crowds coming to them, and also how the supply chain issue is impacting both how companies are operating and how customers are treating customer service workers. It is a large cluster of an issue that is fascinating to me as somebody who enjoys looking at the tourism industry. And you have some knowledge of that. How has your trips to Olympic been? Like, how was parking at Staircase? We'll start that way and then go in.
Yeah, I mean, we arrived early and the parking lot was already half full. And by the time we came back to refuel at 10 o'clock, people were already asking if we'd be leaving so they could get our parking spot.
And this was 4th of July weekend.
Saturday, 4th of July, exactly. So, and by the time we did actually leave, obviously Staircase was like explodingly full. And the entire road around Party Rock by Lake Cushman is a no parking zone now.
Yep.
And
so great.
So and cars are parked everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Fewer, it's not insane. I mean, if there wouldn't be no parking, I don't know if I could have gone through with my car.
Yep.
But National Forest Service was out ticketing people and left and right. So, it was busy. What was crazy was down in Hoodsport. I've never waited longer from coming down that staircase road to that T intersection connecting to 101. I've never waited longer, tried to take a right turn onto 101.
Yeah.
The cars were backed up so far, it was insane. And the town was just like hopping.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Again, 4th of July weekend, though.
4th of July weekend, absolutely. I mean, it was definitely a thing. I mean, I didn't have any more interactions than that, other than Ben and I were debating if we should wear masks into the grocery store, and then I opened the door in the parking lot, and I'm surrounded by gigantic lifted white trucks with American flags. I'm like, I'm going to wear a mask. I am absolutely going to wear a mask.
It's going to be the birthplace of that Lambda variant.
Exactly. Even if it's just
trace it back
to hide my face, I'm going to wear a mask.
Exactly. That's more of it now. Like, now I can just, like, walk around just angry the whole time and barely have it visible in my eyes. But yeah, it's been crowded. And deservedly so on holiday weekends, and just summer in general. This is when people travel. This is when people are supposed to. But the parks, while crowded, and you'll see inflammatory articles saying that all the parks are crowded and they're at capacity too much, and then you read and it's just pretty much Utah and maybe Rocky Mountain, which is just parks with only one road in and one road out, are feeling the effects of this. If you have a place like Yellowstone, where there's multiple entrances and exits and there's loop roads and everything, it does not actually feel that crowded once you're in the park, aside from heavily congested areas. But the issue is everybody is staying at these towns just outside the parks, and we're seeing an inundation of people. We're seeing record crowds in the parks. That's an undeniable fact. We're also seeing those people go into the towns. The issue is the towns don't have the capacity or the workforce to currently handle this. And this has been fascinating for me to watch, because every single business around Yellowstone has a now hiring sign. Mm-hmm. To get an oil change at any place that you can schedule takes 2 weeks. To get a flat tire fixed takes a week.
Oh my gosh.
To get new tires will take a week, because there's that few places and that many people. And so that raises this level of stress and anger that consumers and customers and visitors have when they visit these small towns. And there's this question of, why aren't they hiring more people? And I think that's twofold. As somebody who is partners with someone who works in the service industry, how is the service industry right now, Mathias?
Well, I mean, I've said before multiple times to you and to the people around me that we are in one of the most difficult and precarious times, right? We've globally survived a pandemic. We are the survivors, but we had life-altering experiences over the last year. Nobody expected that we would live in a society where we would run out of toilet paper, and I mean, it's been nonstop, right? I mean, I'm trying to raise kids who are fully aware of the news, and I'm trying to make good face to the fact that it feels apocalyptic, right? I mean, we've got this compounding thing of a pandemic and climate change, and this world is different, and yet we are surviving and trying to make sense of it all. And you don't know of the things that are continuing, how many of them are good and how many are bad, and on the things that are disappearing, how many were good and how many were bad. And so in some respects, everything is changing and nothing is changing. And that's sort of the most confusing time, right? I mean, every store is open, or most stores are open. We are used to superhero movies where life-altering things happen, and we sort of, the way the story is told, it never shows us the aftermath. It always shows us the life-altering event. Mm-hmm. And the life-altering event is so great that everybody is just perfectly transformed. Nobody needs therapy afterwards. Nobody is bankrupt afterwards. Nobody needs to sort of rebuild out of the rubble.
The only movie that I think really addressed that to some degree was the last Avengers movie.
Yes.
But even so, brushed over.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, the story is always told from the heroes who might be theoretically held accountable for the destruction that they caused, but realistically, as long as they keep heroing, everything's fine, right? And so anyway, I think it's just absolutely crazy time, right? I mean, everything is supply constrained. Just this week, the Ever Given, even though that giant ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal and disrupted global shipping, I don't think had a direct effect on the West Coast shipping supply. It still was sort of this metaphor of where we are at with our global shipping. I was just talking to somebody saying that the person who invented the shipping container had a bigger influence on our life today than the person who invented the internet. Mm-hmm. Because the second products were put in shipping containers, it fundamentally changed how people treat the liability of what's in the container. So a boat can carry thousands of containers, and is not reliable for the content inside because it's only reliable for the content for the containers. Anyway, the shipping industry is completely fucked up in a sense that stores don't have any products. Like, it's crazy. And you know, you were saying how every store is trying to hire people. People are not willing to work service jobs with minimum wage when prices have increased on everything. And at the same time, we're coming out of this pandemic and we are expecting to go out and enjoy life and have the expectation that in order for us to feel good, everything needs to work for us.
Yes.
And then it's all of a sudden we can't last minute buy the sandals that we need for our summer vacation, or we can't get a table at our restaurant that we've been driving for 2 hours, right? Then when we've been cooped up in our house trying to survive a pandemic, then our fuse breaks and we think that we are entitled to this consumer therapy that we've been conditioned to expect and deserve. Boom.
Yes.
That's my rant, right? This is where we're at.
So, and that's an issue facing every city, basically.
Yeah.
What's fun is the gateway towns are under more pressure from that, because not only are they dealing with the same issues as larger places, but they're not used to dealing with more people. We can't plan for how many people might come. So the supplies ordered are less. But the main issue that I really want to just bring into light is that because of COVID, the gateway communities and the national parks themselves have been unable to use the J1 visa program.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
Which is a non-immigrant exchange program that allows international workers travel to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
This is exploitative labor at its best. It's the cornerstone of American society to figure out how we can pay people the least amount of money and have a strong workforce. Go ahead and read a history book if you disagree with me on that. But the gateway communities, while often outwardly expressing very nationalistic views, are very reliant on international workers to get them through the summer months. And without those international workers, we do not have the workforce willing to put up with the current stressors on our communities. And it's evident everywhere you go because, again, every place is hiring because no one can find the workers. But even places that are hiring are now having to say things like, hey, we're going to pay $12, we're going to pay $15 an hour, because they realize that no one else is going to work for minimum wage or below minimum wage with board. And I feel like the current way that our gateway communities are a good representation of the larger conversation we need to have about workers' rights and treating employees with respect, both as an employer and as customers. Because it's not the employee's fault that they're understaffed. It's not the business's fault that they're understaffed. It's an expectation of that specialness and uniqueness that you should be catered to because that's how it is in your small town in Oklahoma.
Well, and the question is, I wonder if it actually is that way in your small town in Oklahoma, because, we have expectations on our vacation experiences being magical that are different from our at home. At home, if we walk into a Target and we don't get the product and we Amazon Prime it, and we're good, right? We have the ability to go from one store to another if we don't find something. But on vacation, we can't Amazon Prime our shit, and we don't we don't want to spend hunting from store to store until we find what we're looking for. In our hometowns, we know what restaurants are busy at what time, and we're smart enough to go during an off time or but we go on vacation, and if the family's hungry at 6:30, then we expect to waltz into a little downtown, and they're all cheering and wooing us for our credit card dollars, right? And so we are not willing to put this into consideration that, oh yeah, probably everybody is right now trying to get dinner and stuff, right?
Yep.
And the other thing is, I just talked with somebody who lived in Seattle for years, and he just moved his family out to Ocean Shores because they get to work remote, right? I mean, I wonder how many people, but not work, bring dollars to those towns through the property taxes and their shopping, but they are not working the service jobs, right? They work remote. And so
I would say anybody, I'd say pretty much anybody capable of working remotely, though, with a job like that wasn't going to be more than likely working a service job anyway. No,
exactly, right? But I mean, I think we've also seen a little bit through COVID this exodus out of the cities through the smaller towns, right? Which here in Olympia, I think allowed restaurants to. I mean, I'm not going to say flourish. They're going to hate me if I'm going to say that, because I think they were all struggling through the pandemic. But I think this panic that all the restaurants are closing didn't quite happen in Olympia. Like most of them actually survived. There are few where I think the owners retired and things like that. But in general, there are tons of new restaurants that opened in town, and even all the new buildings where we thought that nothing would happen. I mean, people were opening businesses in them. Yeah. And it's actually sort of exciting, but
it's the same here.
Yeah. They're struggling with hiring service workers, right? And I mean, who can blame them? It's one thing to talk about the wage. It's another talking about the customer service. Customer service is the classical, most underrated job in the U.S. Because I don't know. I mean, I know what the ultimate expectation is, why we have these jobs, but what the job entails after having worked service for years and what you get out of it. Well, I mean, perhaps it's time to completely redefine what it means to serve someone food.
You're
40 hours a week, right?
Yep. You're expected also, I think, we're seeing a couple other prongs emerge from this. You're expected to bend over backwards for a company that will quickly let you off or reduce your hours to keep themselves in a better position and still give management or the ownership group. And I'm talking larger companies, not mom and pop shops here, but will still give bonuses even when they're laying off employees. And so why should someone be loyal to a company like that? One. And two, the other thing that's emerged from this is our bloated housing market, especially in these gateway communities, but all over the country. Almost every community is seeing housing prices skyrocket. And when you're only going to pay employees $8 an hour or whatever, depending what state you're in and what the minimum wage is, how are they supposed to live when the average rent is $2,000 a month?
Well, yeah, I mean, if housing prices increase 20% year over year and wages increase 1 to 2% if you're lucky, well, then there's a disparity there, right? And the free market capitalist has an answer to that, right? It's a supply and demand. I mean, if you want to hire people, I don't know, start paying them more. Yep. I mean, it
goes both ways. If you want to have it that way, that's fine, but you have to pay more. Yeah. You can't pay less. A fun thing here, the average housing price in Bozeman I saw of what sold in the last 2 months was $800,000. So, yeah. And even here in Livingston, it's like 450.
Yeah, it's insane.
And it's crazy to me. And a lot of people will be like, it's these tech people coming in, they're not doing anything. But it's
it's the independent writers.
Yeah, it's all those independent writers that are doing it. Yeah, our 2 gigs or 2 writing gigs a month are just really, really racking up the dough. But it's interesting because while tech people are moving in, this rudeness that I see didn't happen in the spring or the winter. It only happens in the summer. It's not the people that live here that are always responsible, or even responsible in the majority. It's this expectation of taking home values, or you're on vacation and you should have things catered to you, to the place where you're going. And you're going to places that don't have a workforce, that are too expensive to live to support a workforce, or are run by, or have tons of employees in places like Xanterra who are just known to focus on trying to get the cheapest labor possible. By the way, Xanterra normally hires, Xanterra tends to pay $11 to $12 an hour, which is a huge increase. Unemployment rate is super low here in Montana, but the number of people employed through Xanterra is down by 4,000 people or so. And that's just for Yellowstone. So they've had to cut tours, they've had to cut restaurants, they've had to cut gift shops and things like that. And that's in the park, and not even talking out of the park of places that may not hire as many people.
Yeah.
So if you're really, the whole point of this is, if you're traveling and you see people being rude, they're fed up, and it's okay that they're fed up, but remember that, like, taking it out on the employees that are actually there and the businesses that are open doing their best is not great. If you're upset about this, support union jobs. Vote for people who actually create jobs instead of pretending to create jobs. So, vote for minimum wages that can support people who can live in the community. Help get people involved that will build affordable housing for employees.
I am absolutely fascinated to going to be traveling to Europe, into tourist destinations, in the light of this situation, because Europe had a pandemic too. Europe has a diverse society that believes of a wide variety of things that their freedom of them being a free society, they're allowed to believe. And so I'm very curious what the effects are in Europe in the different places, both in normal society. Like, how did the government respond and help people during the pandemic? And then also in tourist places where demands are equally as high as they are here, right? I mean, if people go to Switzerland and stay in a little mountain town, they also expect to get a Kaiserschmarrn for dinner. And so I'm very, very curious to sort of bring these stories back and compare, right? Because there's so many practical things we can attach this conversation to. There are psychological things that people have been living through trauma, and they're either letting it out on their fellow neighbor because they feel like that they have the right to that, or they're not willing to go back to work because they're fed up with being subjected to that, right? But there is, I mean, there's just a lot going on, and so I'm very curious to see how another tourist region kind of responds to that and what the experience is. I think one big thing, and that's a complete theory, and that's one that I want
That's what podcasts are for, right?
No, exactly. And that's what I want to test out. And this is one big interesting theory that I have, is that and I'm saying the word theory because I really had to base it just on a gut feeling that in Europe, in the Alps, if you go on vacation there, and that's a little bit different than if you go to the Mediterranean, where people go a lot more to party. But in the Alps, a lot of the tourism is driven around highlighting the history and the local people that have lived there for hundreds of years.
Yes.
Like, you might never drink buttermilk out of a glass of buttermilk, but you go hiking and you stop at a little hut where people make their own milk and cheese from their 3 cows on their high alpine meadow, and you drink a glass of buttermilk, right? And you don't have the expectation that you get Red Bull in a can. You drink buttermilk there because that's
what
the
they
locals
have.
make.
That's what they've done. That's the history of that place.
Exactly. And so, in theory, my gut feeling is that because the marketing around these tourist places has been around preserving the culture and the history and honoring these places and participating in what these people have to offer that have been working these mountain regions for hundreds of years, I wonder if the expectation is a little bit different than the classic tourist that drives into the Great West on their road trip, who is sort of being advertised to, directly or indirectly, in this way of like, come to the West with your guns a-blazing. Here is where the last bit of freedom is, and you can hang your dick out and do whatever you want to. That's a little bit how the West advertises itself, directly or indirectly. I'm not trying to blame them for it, but that's a little bit of what the West is known for. Wide open spaces.
It's the Wild West, right?
It's the Wild West. You can do whatever you want to, right? And if people come with that kind of expectation to these gateway communities, well, then their guns are already out of their holsters, right? Then the swagger is already in their step. And if they now all of a sudden are confronted with the real world of product shortage or labor shortage or whatever, then how are they going to respond, right? They're not going to respect the people who live there because they've been told this is the Wild West. They can just shoot themselves into the sunset.
Yep. I love shoot yourself into a sunset. That may be my favorite term in the last few weeks. That's so great. Just gonna shoot myself off into a sunset. That is so perfect. It's what I mean, and you can see this based on stories emerging out of the park. Like just recently, a guy was arrested and is now banned from Yellowstone because he booked a kayaking tour on the lake in Yellowstone, and the guide was like, "You're too drunk to do this." He became violent at the guide and at the rangers.
Yeah.
Because he can do what he wants. What do you mean I can't be drunk and do this? I do this at home. And it's like, well, you shouldn't do that at home either. Don't drink and kayak. More people drown. That's like the number one cause of death in public lands. So
So it's interesting because it's for me it's sort of an outside gut feeling, and the fact that you didn't debunk this, that you sort of agree with it.
Disagree with it at all, just leaned into it too.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, I wonder because I'm sort of stereotyping the West as a vacation destination a little bit, right? But I think that there's something to it, the way people sort of, especially obviously people who don't live in these communities, and they take this big, great American road trip, right? And then they're just throwing the garbage out the window because it's just a desert. It doesn't matter, right? And
we talked about this before with the Explore Hood Canal and the Go Wild.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
the images and the feel of what it was you can do what you want here. It's all beer koozies and bikinis and people jumping off Party Rock and then they can't understand why people show up to Party Rock and get incredibly drunk and people get injured jumping into the water on rocks. Like it's like you fucking told them it was what to do.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Without so much as telling them it's what to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really weird sentiment. And, like, I really hope that when we go to Europe, I can take my family up to one of those Alpine Club refugios cabins, because there is lights out at, I think, 11 o'clock or so, right? There is
Yeah.
only there. You sleep in communal rooms. There is no luxury. There is no internet. There is no TV at every corner. There is not a la carte dining. There are a few items on the menu, and that's what you get, right?
Yep.
And people come with the expectation, and you can't get carried up there. And so there is a little bit of a different feel. Now, are there going to be rude people? Are there going to be assholes in these places? Absolutely, right? I mean, that's what it is. But I think...
Will it be to that extreme that we're seeing here?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that it's... Well, that's what I'm seeing. So I'll report back. I come back with my tail between my legs and like, Europe is insane. I never want to go back to Europe. I hate this place. I wonder. There is
somehow more rude than America.
There's a very personal aspect that I'm absolutely terrified. That. Well, I mean, no. The terrifying
are your rose-colored glasses going to potentially get taken off?
Right. I mean, that's the surface terror, but the underlying fascination is how much has the West Coast changed me, right? I have lived here now for 20 years. I'm a lot more American than meeting Americans. I don't feel very American, but obviously meeting Germans, I will be very Americanized, right?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. And we'll keep monitoring this. As we wrap this episode up, we're going to get a little more personal. I don't really know how to bridge this, but I'll just dive in. For everybody listening, you may or may not know that, like, I've gotten more ranty probably on the last months of episodes, and I am just like at my wit's end with being burnt out. I'm burnt out on being burnt out at this point. I've said that numerous times, and I am struggling to just handle day-to-day things. So I talked with Mathias before this episode and just was like, hey, is it cool if we do this? And, of course, he was like, yeah, absolutely. So I will be taking a few weeks off of the podcast just to kind of try and reset and recenter. I'm doing all right. If you want to reach out, I can probably talk more, but sometimes it's important to take a step back and know that mental health is important, and not being anxiety riddled every waking minute is a good thing to do. So I want everybody to know that taking a few weeks off, I'll be back, and hopefully not as ranty and opinionated as I have been the last few weeks, or I'll be more so. Who knows how I'll come back. But I appreciate this opportunity to be able to speak with you all and to have a platform to talk. But yeah, I just need a break, and I'll be taking a break from pretty much everything. I'll probably not be on social media that much, maybe posting, but just won't be engaging or talking. If you do want to talk, just text me. More than likely to respond that way.
Yes. Thanks for this, Doug. Appreciate the honesty. Stay tuned to your podcast player. I might be able to line up some interviews with some folks. So there might be some episodes, but it might not be weekly. It might be a little bit sporadic. On a technical side, the server transition is complete. We are hosting the podcast now on a different server. If there were some hiccups with the last couple episodes, I apologize. Hopefully this is all squared away and should be downloading as you expect into your players. Please do reach out and let me know if there are any issues you encounter. We'll try to make the technical side happen. Other than that, the summer looks bright. Lots of opportunities to recharge, to R&R, to rejuvenate, and to kind of find ourselves, find our center again, and get after it.
Yep. And again, if you like what you hear on the podcasts, definitely rate and review us. that helps us get boosted on Apple, supposedly. I don't know. Everybody says it. I don't know if it does or not. Also, share this with anybody that you think will enjoy it, and we'll be back soon. So stay tuned.